Hi everyone, I'm back. Oops. Hi. Okay, it always takes a couple seconds. Doo-doo-doo. Where are you at, Barrett? I don't see you on here. Oh, wait. I see you. I see you.
Hi. Everyone is like, I was reading the comments, they're like, they're losing track of time. They're gonna lose the live. Head
Oh
to It was like one of those things, like I get it, and it's good to keep a time limit on it, but I'm like, come on. I do
no! I
always
know.
feel like I'm like losing track of time. Then I'm like, I can't believe we've been talking for an hour already. It's
I
crazy.
can't either, but I
Oh my
love
God.
it.
This
I
is what we
miss
do all the
you.
time. I miss
I
you too.
know.
And we haven't
This
seen
is
each other in
not.
so long.
I know.
Yeah.
Can you answer the? Do you want to? Can you answer the last question?
Yeah. So have I ever been discriminated as a woman, against as a woman, or as a person in general? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. I think, yeah. I mean, there's tons of I mean, I've been in this industry since I was 7,
Yeah.
and I'm a woman, and there's been a lot of things. I think what people don't understand, I think, is that so much has changed for women over the years, and that's when you see the change happening firsthand, that people now, women, because I was going back, like I was arguing with, not arguing, I was having this conversation with someone about the feminist movement and like the Time's Up and Me Too movement and stuff like that. And having that conversation, and some people were in disagreement with it and how it was like all about hating men and this and that. And I was like, to me personally, it was about empowering women to be able to use their voices, because like I felt growing up, it was okay to have a random person of power grab your ass, that it was okay to let things be said or done to you,
Yeah.
because you never saw women standing up against these men, or you never saw another woman standing with you saying that's not okay. Like that person can't do that. So I think it's an interesting yeah, I mean, I think I love that we're living in a time now where things have changed, and we feel like you just have the power to speak up when you're like,
Yeah.
no, that's actually not okay. And
Yeah.
no, I'm not going to be okay with that. And
Yeah.
that might be different to someone else. Someone else might be totally fine with that. Someone, I mean, we're talking about the tiniest little thing. We're talking about, like, say someone grabbing your ass, a boss grabbing your ass. Like, someone might be okay with that. Who knows? I have no idea. And
Well,
then
that's
but other people
that's
might
the
not
kind
be.
of the funny thing about that question, because I remember when I was talking to Lachlan, we we sort of like touched on that, like, because someone asked, like, in casting, like, have you ever not gotten a part because of your like race, or because of something that because of your identity, essentially.
Mhm.
And I was like, I mean, I don't I, I don't know if we would ever know. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
just see who they cast, and then you're like, oh, okay. And it might have nothing to do with your race, but you don't know, so I don't know. But, like, almost when you answered that question, there was a little bit of, because you've been doing this so long, and like you've seen the changes, and I'm sure you've gone through a lot of changes yourself, where it's like, could I even count the time? Like, when wasn't I being, like, when wasn't I being sort of treated like a woman, and what does that mean? And, like, there's so many weird parts of that where you're like, okay, well, I mean, I don't know. It's not a hard line, and unless someone was like, she's too weak, like, you might not know. And it's not a bad question. It's just it's a muddy answer.
It's a hard thing to say because, like, yeah, it's I was gonna go into something, I forgot what the other thing was too. Oh, but also too, like, discrimination too, in what, like, I've absolutely been told you did not get hired because you're too muscular. You did not get hired because, I mean, I've been told those things before. I've been told straight up on the phone,
Yeah,
we
because
want,
no one thinks there's a problem with talking about women's bodies. That's like
well, and that's what's, it's this weird thing.
critiquing and openly criticizing
Well, our
women's bodies.
industry feels like it's one of the only industries that doesn't, that the HR department is a very strange department, because
Hmm.
you are judged
Right.
when you're being cast for a role on the way you look.
Yes.
it's inevitable. They're trying to cast a role that I know that's changing, where people are like, we're trying to cast a person before we cast how they look. And I'm like, I get that, but it still is a muddy, it's just a gray area. Like, you're going to walk into the room and be like, that person doesn't look like who I see the character as being. You're like, well, who do you see the character as being? And sometimes that writer is like, I see the character as being a white woman, a thin, really thin white woman. And you're like, okay, well, would you be open to possibly not being a really thin white woman or whatever? So I don't know. It's, and some people don't think that's a bad thing. They're like, this is how I see it. It's my project.
Sure.
That's how I see it.
Absolutely.
And you're like, I get it, but you're also eliminating an entire pool of people that also could be actually even better at it than what you expected. Like, be open to that.
And it's something that, like, even when you were saying that, it made me think, like, often people, and I would say sort of the status quo. So if you think about it as like white men making that decision, for example, and saying like, this is what I saw for the role. And when you say, well, would you consider this other person? There's this idea that anything other than the thing that they thought of is an obstacle as opposed to an opportunity. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that actually it might deepen the character, or it might strengthen the character, add like another dimension to a character that maybe they hadn't thought of, considered, and then it's like, well, instead of thinking it as like something, oh shit, like, how do we work around this issue? Like, maybe it's a way to add something to the character, and then you can actually have a dialogue with the actor, and they might have some good ideas for you.
Yeah.
Or hire someone who can speak to that, to the character you cast, or the actor you cast, Yeah.
It's interesting. Again, it's the defensiveness that, like, you're changing their image, which is funny because it happens in our industry, but our industry is an insanely collaborative. We're an insanely collaborative profession, but even though we're in this collaborative profession, you still have creatives that are like, no, this is the way I see it. This is the way it has to be. And some of that is considered genius. Like, people win awards because they're so set on, like, no, James Cameron is like, this it has to how it has to be.
Sure, yeah.
And he wins awards for that. So you're like, okay, well, I don't want to take away from your genius creativity, but also you have to be open to all the possibilities. So I don't know. It's such a loaded question for me, being in this profession for so long.
Yeah.
Because also too, I struggled with the Me Too movement even at first, because I was like, I had trained myself so well at being one of the guys, because that was the way you're accepted, is get rid of your femininity. Well, still be sexy, still be thin, and on a diet, and work out, and don't age. Like, really be really sexy all the time, but also be able to, like, hang with the guys, talk like the guys, like, be totally fine with, like, every sexist comment that's made.
Yeah.
Like, I had trained myself so well to be able to, like, be in that world that I was like, well, I don't get it. Like, about certain things, obviously.
Sure.
But this kind of, like, having to training yourself so much to be a certain way, and then realizing that, like, I didn't actually have to do that.
And to, like, feel nothing, that, like, it just asks so much. It is, it's a job that asks a lot, and it asks a lot as, a young woman in this industry like you, and growing up in it. It's like, I mean, I don't even know. Yeah, that's such a great point. No, I'm so glad you said that.
Anyways, it's interesting. It's very interesting, but I think it's almost hard to find someone of any sort of a marginalized person that hasn't been discriminated against. I think they go hand in hand. Like, marginalization and discrimination are basically the same thing. They're not the same thing, but it feels like if you're marginalized, you're discriminated against. Like, it's just. So of course. But yeah, should we get some questions?
Hold on. Sorry. Yeah, I was reading one. Do you believe that feminism is inclusive? Me, as a Black woman, I've been accused many times of creating female rivalry for talking about the privileges of white women. Very interesting.
You cut out. What did it say?
Oh, sorry. It said, do you believe that feminism is inclusive?
Do I believe feminism is inclusive?
Yeah. Well, I think this the writer of this question said, me as a Black woman have been accused many times of creating female rivalry for talking about the privileges of white women. So it was a question. It was a question for it said Barrett, do you believe? But I would also extend that question to you, Danielle, because I think that, I mean, of course, some feminism is inclusive. The goal is I think with feminism, and that's one of the reasons why I was so glad you chose this topic and why talking about it, I was like really. What happened? Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. I was so excited that you chose this topic because I wanted us to be able to talk as two women about intersectional feminism, which is, you know, feminism for all women, in the same way that, you know, I think I said when I posted your video that, you know, intersectionality is certainly beyond just feminism. But we've been hearing about it a lot recently because of the division of sort of all Black lives matter, right? Black trans lives matter. And there are subsections of Black people who don't feel seen or spoken for and are sometimes actively worked against even within the community. And so that's sort of a parallel. But, you know, when we're talking about feminism, do I think feminism is intersectional or inclusive? Yeah. I think that the conversation, I personally believe that the conversation around feminism has primarily been driven by white women. So I think what's super important is for white women to sort of be aware that when you're talking about feminism, there might be more hurdles than just the ones you faced. And that, like, it helps to use that privilege that you may have, skin, you know, color privilege, to like advocate for the issues that might not be yours, but that apply to Asian women, Black women, Latina women, you know, Latinx people, and trans women. So it's, you know,
which again, I go back to that simple thing that it's sometimes so hard. You think you're doing right. Like, I'm sure,
of course,
I would hope that like all white women that are feminists did think they were fighting for all white women. You're just, and ignorance even got a negative connotation. And I
for
don't
all
mean
women, you mean?
Yeah, for all women. What did I say?
Oh, you said all white women. They sometimes do, but yeah, you meant all women. Yeah, I figured.
All women in general. No, thank you for correcting that. That their intentions are to absolutely have equality for all women when they're doing when they're in the feminist movement, but then they're just ignorant, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm ignorant to the Black experience, a Black woman's experience. I'm learning we've been friends. We've had many hard hitting conversations, but like, you just don't know what you don't know. And unfortunately, sometimes people, I think, just, yeah, they just, they don't think. And then they do things that they think are for the right reasons. And then they realize after the fact that they were doing this, what they thought was the right reasons, and they completely left out an entire group of people while they were fighting for this cause. And then they get reprimanded for it, and then they get defensive, and then it causes sometimes causes a division. Anyways, wait, someone said something, and I was like, it got me. Okay, I'm gonna go to the question box.
Oh, great, love it.
All the questions are so long, it's so hard to actually see what they say. There's so many good questions. The writing is so tiny. Do you want to say about anything while I'm doing this, while my face is zoomed in on the screen?
Well, I saw a question about how do you deal with family members with opposing views?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I have family members with opposing views. I mean, they live very far away, and I've like not totally had a conversation with them about this stuff. But you know, it's been interesting because I think I said this on another live, but you know, the conversations that I have with my family might feel very different than the conversations that you have with your family, of course. You know, like it's different having these conversations as a person of color and as a white person talking to other white people. You know, it's tough in a totally different way.
It is. Have you been able to have those conversations, or do you just kind of go like, I'm not going to have it?
I haven't. I am sort of the mindset that for me, I don't know if I'm ready or I'm comfortable enough having that conversation with my with some of my family members. I mean, obviously everyone's families are different, and but it's challenging to know that those differences exist when we have a family that's like diverse, and it's hard for me to understand, and I get really emotional and passionate about it, and I don't want to say anything I would regret. So I find it easier to just not have the conversation and hope that they send them some books at Christmas. Actually, you know what I've been doing for the last couple years? I've been it's sort of passive aggressive, but I like it. I've been making donations on their behalf to organizations that I believe in at Christmas.
On these people that have opposing view, like that are in opposing views with you mean?
Yeah. Yep. I donate
Amazing.
I don't know, $40 each or something to, Planned Parenthood and the ACLU and on their behalf and in their names. That's what I've been doing. Because I don't know if I will ever be able to change their feelings, but at least I'm not, I don't know.
Sorry, there's so many good questions. It's making it really hard. Going back to that and like talking to people with opposing views, yeah, it's really hard. You know me though, I've made it my mission to try to get people to
I'm so fucking proud of you. Yeah.
As you know, many emotional, upset conversations where I'm like bawling my eyes out, like, why don't they understand? It's hard. It's really hard to have those conversations, but I feel like in the end, some of the conversations, there was a little bit of movement in their thought process, or at least understanding and being open to things. But in the end, sometimes you're right, I don't think they'll ever fully change where they stand and the big issues. But getting them to at least support, Black Lives Matter and explaining what that is, and it's in a way that it's been rough, but it's been like my goal, because I feel like I also, as much as I respect people that have opposing views around me, there's certain things that I'm like, okay, yes, you can have an opposing view, but let's talk about let's educate each other first. Like, let me explain to you all these things and then tell me where you stand. And if you still stand there, then I'll be like, okay. But it makes
at least I said it.
At least we got it out. At least we had the conversation. And sometimes it's just a matter of like, I don't know. How do you feel about this? People that support Black Lives Matter but aren't public about supporting Black Lives Matter. The reason I ask this question is because I have a lot of friends that will have these debates and conversations, and it's like, no, Danielle, I support Black Lives Matter, and I'm like, but they will not be like vocal about it, Right. And then you hear this like, well, if you're silent, then you're in opposition, and I don't know, because it's like I know these people, and I know they're not racist individuals, so it's like, I don't know. It's like,
I think being silent is different than like posting on social media. You know what I mean? Like, being silent means you don't speak up when you hear people say racist, stupid shit. You don't like, you aren't, you're sort of being like passively, just passive about your engagement with some of these issues. And like, I totally respect people's feelings about posting or not posting on social media, for example. But when it comes down to actually voting or and not necessarily voting for candidates, but voting for certain laws or speaking out when something is wrong, that happens in front of them, like that's when, silence is complicity. You know what I mean? And like so I don't really, the only thing that I think really being vocal about it helps is that it shows the people who might need an ally that they have one in you. I had an old friend, and I can't remember again if I said this during a live. I think I might have said it during the live with Brett at one point, but I have a really old, very close friend who lives in the Midwest still, which is where I'm from. And I sort of made an
Yes.
analogy about when you speak openly about it, you can be sort of like the lighthouse, right? Like when it's foggy and people are at sea and afraid, and they can see that there's a safe place to go. You know, if you
Yeah.
live in a very sort of monolithic, like not very diverse place, and there are a few people who stick out for one reason or another, whether they're a different race or a different sexual orientation or whatever, and they don't know that they have someone to go to, it can be really scary and really isolating. So like the benefit of speaking out allows you to be sort of a place to go and a safe haven, so they know that they're not totally alone.
Yeah.
And so that's certainly a benefit of speaking out. But if you you know, if you don't, and you're doing other things to make sure you help, then sure, like, you know, it's good to believe in it. The most important thing, I think, is just understanding what it means and not misinterpreting the message.
Which I think is super important, because I mean, looking at the comments just by asking that question, there are a lot of strong opinions that feel if you aren't super vocal right now, then you are completely in opposition of it. And I know a lot of people that aren't. I know a lot of people that actually do support Black Lives Matter. I of course wish they were public, you know, and spoke out and were vocal and everything. But I also know them as individuals and on a daily basis. And I know that they're honest in their thoughts and beliefs. And, you know, sometimes it's different too. Like, I have one specific friend who absolutely supports Black Lives Matter, is a gay man. His dad is a police officer. So, you know, there's that world where he's like, of course I support Black Lives Matter. He's like, I'm not going to, that's his choice. I'm not going to be vocal about it. But I have my own conversations with my dad in private, and I work in the healthcare industry. And so he's got his own viewpoints and how he does it, and I have to respect that too. And so when I do see people getting so angry at some people for not posting about certain things, I kind of am like, everyone's got to go about it their own way. Like,
sure,
of course, I would love if everyone was out there screaming it from the rooftops.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who like don't use social media like that. You know what I mean? Like for us, obviously, in a little, you know, in sort of the public eye, we have a different type of responsibility, I think.
Yeah.
But even then, you know, there are people who choose not to and choose to behave a certain way in their personal life, and you know, that's totally their choice. But yeah, I just feel like there's no wrong way to grow. That's why, like, when we're doing this, it's always like, I feel like every week we say the same thing, which is like, it's okay to not be an expert. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to evolve, for your opinions and your feelings to evolve and change too. Like, I might not be as radical now as I will be in 3 minutes. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of ways where we can advance, you know, and where we are right now might be totally different than where we are in a couple years.
Well, I hope. I mean, that's the beautiful thing, is like we're constantly evolving, and for the most part, I think just thinking back on one specific thing, like obviously some people think obviously certain things are not evolving in the right direction. But if you look at something like that, you know, 1964, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and how it didn't protect Black women because it didn't fall under Black men or white women, that's changed. And so, you know, it's things like that it's like, okay, well, certain things are changing in the right direction, and using your voice does have an impact. And having those hard conversations and making people accountable for their actions. It's interesting. Oh my God, we're getting so deep into some of these conversations.
I love it so much. But I don't know, should we like leave it there? Or do you want to do one more question? Or do you want to just talk about whatever?
I mean, you know, me and you could talk for hours.
I know. It's scary.
Someone said this, and I read this. Danielle, what can you do to commit to stopping racial injustice from working on set? I'm lucky enough to work on a Shonda Rhimes show, a Shonda Land show, an ABC show. It is a very, very diverse, inclusive set. If there was any sort of racist, I mean, you can attest to this too, Barrett. If there was any sort of sexist, racist acts conversation, something going on, they wouldn't be stood for. And we live in a set that is very different than other sets that I've been on, where you feel like you're very safe and very protected. I do, at least, compared to other sets that I've been on. But I mean, from here on out, it's scary to speak up, but I think you have to speak up when there's something said, even if it doesn't affect you. Like, I am a white woman, but if I heard a racist joke, something is like that, it's standing up for being like, that's not cool. Like, I don't actually want to be can you not say that? That's racist. Or explaining to a person, like, do you realize what you just said was racist? Or do you realize what you just said was sexist? Or I'm getting for lack of better verbiage, I'm getting the balls to actually be able to be like,
Yeah.
That's not okay. Because I think before you think, oh, if it's not a sexist thing, being a woman, then maybe just stay out of it. And I think now you're realizing, like, no, the world that we live in cannot afford you to just sit back and stay out of it.
Yeah.
But it's also, and I'll cuss on this one, it's fucking scary. And I get that. It is fucking scary to stand up to people that you know are going to get defensive the second you say, listen, I don't appreciate that. Even if it's someone grabbing your ass as a woman that is completely uninvited and you're like, don't touch my ass, they get defensive. You're like, the normal
It was a joke.
Like, they're like, it was a joke. I was like, I didn't say
Who's
grab
laughing, dude? Like,
but it's just, yes. So that would be what committing to stopping racial injustice. I mean, like I said on our show, we live an amazing
but I'm telling
show.
you, I mean, I
What?
said something once to somebody. Yeah.
Oh.
Not
It
it wasn't an actor, but you know, and it was very uncomfortable. And it's so weird because normally I feel like people don't say weird shit around me, you know? And it's not because it's because
weird shit as in what?
No,
racist
not
shit?
weird shit.
Like,
Everyone says weird shit around me because I'm weird. But no, I mean like racist stuff, you know, or sexist stuff. Like people don't do that, obviously. Oh, hold on. I know you're going to plug your phone in.
Sorry.
You're okay.
Okay.
But no, like I was, and it's so uncomfortable. And and it's like, you know, even if someone's making a joke and you can totally know it's a joke, and you're still like, oh my God, that was the most racist thing I've ever heard here, I think is what I said in that moment. And I like couldn't, at the very least, calling it out as racist and being like, yeah, get comfortable with that word. You know what I mean? Like, because if you do and say kind of stupid shit sometimes, you should get comfortable hearing that.
And would you say though, one of the sad things about what you're saying is, I don't know who, we'll have to discuss after this who it was you had to say that to, but like my the people on our show, I'm assuming the person that said didn't know that what they were saying, or did they? That what they were saying was racist?
No, it was
like, did they not think they were being racist?
I think it's when something is on the line, which is, well, it's not, no, okay, not on the line. That's not the correct way to say it. But like imitating an accent, for example.
Oh, I actually know what you're talking about now. I know what you're talking about. Yes,
is not
that was
like
so
that's
that day
racist.
was so
you know what I mean? And like, it's not necessarily, you're not saying anything negative, but it's racist. And you just have to get comfortable hearing it. Because like, if that's the way you roll, then someone's gonna, don't do it this year. Because you're gonna have about 9 people saying, oh, excuse me. And you don't have to be aggressive about it. You can be aggressive about it, but like, people interpret, you know, it's the old thing where like you call someone a racist and it's like you used a slur against them, and it's like, no, you just like you can say, oh, I can totally see how that was wrong, you know what I mean? Like, and we should practice receiving that, because I expect, you know, when we say, I would hope that if I say something insensitive and wrong, that when someone corrects me, I can say, oh, I totally can understand that. And, you know, and practice receiving the correction. You know what I
And it
mean?
takes a
Because
lot. It's not
it
always an
takes a
easy thing
lot.
to do. I mean, we've had many conversations where I'll say something and you're like, and then you explain to me, and I'm like, oh, and that's not easy to do. It's not easy to think that my way of thinking like is wrong. There's certain things that
Right.
that I was raised on or about or whatever. And I'm not saying big, huge things, like just little things that you don't realize. And that someone had asked, like, what's wrong with imitating an accent? It was the way it was done. Just so you guys
Sure.
know, it was the way it was done. It was mocking someone of their accent, which is just another form of, in my opinion, kind of like bullying. Like, it was making fun of someone's accent. If I'm correct, Barrett?
I think kind of.
Are
Kind of.
we
Well,
talking about
we'll
the same?
have to
Okay.
speak after this and talk about it. But yeah, but it, you know, it's it's like mocking you know, a stereotype, a cultural stereotype. And like it's just weird. But you know.
Oh God, there's so many good questions. This conversation can go on and on and on. Someone said
I know.
the argument is the more intersections you have, the more victimized you are, the more allegedly, it keeps moving. No, sorry. Oh, stop moving. The argument is the more intersections you have, the more marginalized you are, the more allegedly victimized you are. How do you keep the dialogue open and let your voices be represented? If I were to touch on that, it's like everything gets so, like, why does everything become so negative? Like, feminist becomes negative.
Mm-hmm.
Intersectionality becomes negative. Like, victimized becomes a negative. Like, I don't think anyone, I mean, I don't want to be victimized. I don't want to be a victim.
No, sure.
I don't think people want to be victimized. I don't know. So that was a hard
Yeah,
question. Not a
that's a
hard
really
question,
hard
but like a
question.
loaded question. Um, because I think that was one of the oppositions of intersectionality, to go full circle, since that's what this
Yeah.
conversation was about, was like people, and I get what they're saying, is the more intersectionality there is, the more, the more groups there are that are seeming like they're victimized. I don't know how to answer that, because and I'm using the wrong verbiage to even
Well,
explain it.
right. Well, she uses that analogy, right, of like there's like a ceiling, right? And there are people stacked sort of on each other's shoulders up to the ceiling. Okay? And at the top of the ceiling, like at the ceiling, are like white women and black men in this country, I think, you know. And then if you use that sort of, this is what Kimberly Crenshaw said when she was talking about
Yeah.
intersectionality. But then you realize the ceiling is actually the floor of the floor above it.
Yes.
And if someone cut a hole in that floor, the people closest to the top, who are dealing with fewer intersections, are going to get through there first. And then if you're, the lower you are, the harder it is to get through. And so, but it seems like what you're saying about victimization almost talks about that inverted power structure again, right? That like the farther down you are, the more help you might need, which I think is being misinterpreted as like you're going to end up higher than everyone else. And if we structure our whole society around intersectionality, then, you know, the most minority is going to be the king and we're all going to be below them. And it's like, that's not actually, that will never happen. That will never happen. Now, do I want that person to be my president? Yes, because I truly believe that they understand. I can't think of, I feel like most people, and this is a generalization that's definitely coming from a privileged place, but a lot of people who experience intersectionality want the same for everyone. You know, like you start to sort of see, like, I'm not trying to put the people above me down, you know. And we always come back to the same thing, which is we're not trying to take anything away. Stop making it about like,
it gets exhausted.
it's so I mean, and that's why it's so frustrating, because it's not that hard to understand. But when you have people who are scared and clinging to like the idea of something that keeps them on top, of course they're gonna want to do everything they can to complicate the issue and make it harder and harder for us to achieve, for other groups to achieve some idea of like equality and justice. It's like really shocking, because it should not be that hard.
It is crazy
to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and I think of thinking of it more like the word that it has been a word that's been weaponized by saying it's about victimizing people, which was never the intention. It was just to bring to light, the word intersectionality was just to put a name. Again, like I said in my video, that Kimberly Crenshaw was like, you just have to put a name to something or no one will ever know it exists. And if no one ever knows it exists, you can't fix it. We're not trying to victimize these people. These people are being discriminated against, just like Black people were discriminated, like in her conversation, say Black men weren't supposed to be hired or weren't allowed to be hired before a specific date, and white women weren't allowed to be hired before a specific date. So they were discriminated against at different times. But currently, a Black woman or 5 Black women in that instance are being discriminated against. So everyone's been discriminated against at some point, and everyone's gotten their laws protecting them. You know, these are the groups have their laws protecting them in a work environment, but they missed this very important part where they're like, oh, we just forgot to protect Black women. Oh, and we just forgot to protect people of the LGBT community. And it's not victimizing them. It's like saying like, hey, listen,
it's just letting people fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
It's not protecting them. Like you said, the protections aren't there, as opposed to actively putting them down and saying you don't get this because you're a Black woman. It's just they weren't included. Like their particular subset concern wasn't included. And then of course it got turned on its head in that case where they were like, well, then you just open Pandora's box, then every minority group is going to want special protections, which is the same thing they said during the Reformation after the Civil War. That's the exact same thing that politicians were saying, was as soon as you start giving special treatment to Black people, then who's not going to come for their piece of the pie? And it's like, but did you not just experience the last 400 years? Because they sure as shit did, you know, and you realize that it's actually just, and then it turns into willful deceit and discrimination. But it usually starts as like an accident, and then when you realize that it actually might take some action to fix it, they don't want to do the work.
Yep. That is
so here we are doing the work.
No, this has been awesome. Everyone's like, people are like, it's 5 a.m. where I am, I'm going to bed.
I don't blame them.
This is awesome. I mean, I love having these conversations too, and I think what you've always been, and I want to say thank you too, is like, I do have moments when I slip up and say things like earlier when I was talking about voting in your self-interest, and we were able to have that conversation about our even understanding what that actually means in itself and how I interpret it and how you interpret it and what that means. And like, it's just so great to have somebody in my life that I can have conversations with like this, that actually allows, we allow each other to talk and sometimes be like, I don't know if I agree with what you just said. And then for me to be like, well, this is what I meant, or no, okay, you shed light on something that I didn't actually realize by saying this, it comes out like this, or it's putting whatever emphasis on something that I didn't mean for it to. So it's interesting. It's just great to have, it's great to have our friendship and to be able to have these conversations. And people are like, well, I can't believe you're still on the live. Like me and Barrett, just so everybody can talk about this stuff about
anything.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I always love having these conversations, and I'm so happy that you did 19 for 20. What's the next topic going to be, and who is it going to be?
Oh, well, inspired by you, and as we move into this like second half, we are going to have Devin Way from Grays is going to do next week's topic, and he is talking about race, nationality, culture, and what's the third one? race, nationality, culture, and I don't know.
Race,
I can't remember.
nationality,
Culture, and I forget the fourth one. But yeah,
Everything
he's doing that. He's doing that sort of breakdown of how,
Okay.
you know, when we talk about our identities, what are we actually talking about? So that should be fun. And then we have
I
a couple
love
more
that. We've had that
social
conversation
justice
before.
issues coming with other awesome new guests. And then we're going to get into some like other social justice slash like political topics too.
Awesome.
So yeah, we'll talk.
I love it. I love having these conversations. Thanks for having them with me. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to actually listen to us talk about this and going back and forth about it. I think the most important thing you can do, in my personal opinion, you can disagree with me, Barrett, if you'd like, but like, is to just talk, is to talk as much as you can until
Yeah.
you're like, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. That's something that actually that's, you know, I mean, talking for us is luckily pretty easy. But like but that is true, you know, it's like we've been doing this. I was talking to my dad again about this too, and we've been doing this you were our 9th topic.
I am?
So we've been doing this 9 weeks, which is honestly a super long time. And we're doing it for 10 more. And when I think about it and sort of taking on a project like this, I didn't think it was going to feel this long because I'm like, wow, do we really have 10 more weeks? And then I thought about it. I'm like, that's the important part. It's that when this idea is sort of fading out of the zeitgeist and we're not really talking about all of this stuff as much as we were 9 weeks ago, and the weeks before that, obviously, these issues are still here. We haven't forgotten about them, and we have to keep talking about them. So persisting through and continuing to have these conversations and to just like keep people in the loop is like it's hard and exhausting, but it's important. So thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you for allowing me
And for keeping up.
to be a part of it.
I'm
I
so
can't
glad.
speak. Jesus, after an hour and 45 minutes, I'm like, thank you for being a part of it. I can't even speak. Do you see me over here?
Take a nap.
So tired. No, thank you for letting me be a part of it. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to me and Barrett talk. We do it a lot.
We have fun.
But yeah, I hope everyone's encouraged to get out there and have their own conversations with their friends and family and see where they go. And I love you to death, Barrett.
Love
and I
you.
can't wait, to see you next week.
Next week? I know. That was just a nice little treat for the people who have been wondering when Station 19 is coming back. Well, we're sort of hoping that we're going to see each other starting next week.
Next week. Yeah. So everything's touch and go, but wouldn't that be awesome? There's a little tidbit of Station 19. So
yeah.
I hope I get to see you next week. If not, I'll see you.
Yeah, and I will call you because we have some talking to do after that.
Oh, I can't wait.
Okay, I'll call you in a few minutes.
I love you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Barrett.
Thanks for watching, guys.